Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to today's local search clinic. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Niki. I'm from 2 Octobers here in Denver, Colorado, and I am super passionate about both local SEO and technical SEO, and really excited to answer all of your Google My Business questions today.
Fantastic. Thank you. I could hear you perfectly. It sounds like our audience could. Noah, can you say a few words as well, please?
Sure. My name is Noah Lerner. I joined 2 Octobers in March after founding a little firm called Bike Shop SEO. We were the leading SEO provider in the bike industry. Super stoked to join 2 Octobers to help build tools that help SEOs all over the world. So it's been super fun so far.
Fantastic, excellent. We're going to dive into your experience, obviously, throughout the kind of course of the webinar. So, we've obviously had a chat about it. You guys have got a wealth of experience, and obviously, the kind of topic today is all about kind of managing kind of multiple kind of GMB locations. So, hoping to hear lots of strategic stuff from you in terms of how you tackle and you think about the kind of problems and the opportunities that you face there. But also, love to hear as much kind of tactical stuff, any kind of specific kind of customer experience that you've had. Obviously, for confidentiality, please exclude any kind of names, but anything that can really kind of ground the information in reality is really, really sort of helpful. So, Niki, do you think you're the head of SEO or you're the SEO lead?
Yep, I'm head of SEO, correct.
Okay, and how big is your team?
There's about 6 of us that practice SEO regularly, and then we're really into cross-discipline training. So we have a couple of SEO specialists who dabble in SEO and paid search and a little bit of paid social and even some tool building. So we've got people that are experienced in a lot of different areas, which is really helpful and really fun.
You there, Miles?
Miles froze. This is when we talk about Miles, right?
Well, I think I get to pepper you with more questions. This is fun.
Uh-oh.
So, Niki, what's your favorite GMB stuff that you're doing now locally?
I'm totally lost BrightLocal.
Enterprise GMB stuff that you're doing.
Enterprise GMB stuff. Well, Noah and our team actually built a really cool tool recently along with Agency Automator's crew that helps make managing GMB posts and GMB Q&A a lot easier, and I'll let you give a little more info about how to find that and how to use that.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that later.
You want to give it away now? Yeah,
sure. What the hell? If you go
kill some time while we wait for them to come back.
Crazy that we lost our host. So yeah, if you go to G Suite Marketplace and you type in GMB as a search term or Post-O-Matic as a search term, it's just a Google Sheets add-on, and it allows you to build GMB posts even for chains, and it allows you to schedule them in the future. It's got UTM tagging baked in based on Claire Carlisle's formulas, and it also allows you to manage GMB Q&As and also allows you to respond to reviews that are in Google. That's what we've been working on. It's been super fun.
It's super helpful. I have a couple of multi-location clients. It's one thing that I find really fun is managing multi-location local SEO clients and being able to seed the Q&A, which you can do on your own. Even if you're the business owner, you can seed your own Q&A and reply to the questions. And being able to do that at scale from the tool is super helpful, and not having to go and find all of the GMB listings and update those. Yay, Miles is back.
Yay, thank goodness.
Brilliant. That's so embarrassing. Thank you. Whole internet just went. It was like, oh my God, we're cursed. The kind of the grand love struck again. Anyway, I'm on my phone Wi-Fi now because that's to be my step. I'm going to touch it. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay?
We can hear you okay.
Just give me a sec.
Niki, we should probably dive into the questions. I'll pretend I'm Miles.
Yeah.
Because you're like the crew. So Can you tell us what the best practice is to set up URL structure for building local citations?
For building local citations?
Like, let's say you have a chain and you've got stores in 12 cities. What's the strategy that you like to employ?
So as far as URL structure, I think definitely having your business name. So for 2 October / location / city state name, I think is definitely the cleanest. Making sure that you have locations in there in that subdirectory, I think is definitely a good idea because it helps establish that this is the location section and that these are your location pages.
So you like domain.com / location or stores and then / city name, or do you go straight root domain / city?
I like putting that locations in between.
Okay, cool, great.
Locations or stores. I think it gives a little more structure to it.
Awesome. And that's from Doug Bradley. The next one that we got is,
Can you hear me again?
What's that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, our Wi-Fi is rebooting. Apparently, it goes on 4 o'clock. As with most of the business, we're in the office very often these days. We're generally working at home. So I thought I'd come in the office. I thought it'd be guaranteed cast iron Wi-Fi being here, but that is not the case. So at some point, I'm going to switch my phone back onto the Wi-Fi. So there'll be another little blip. But Niki and Noah, thank you for being such seasoned professionals and for kind of dealing with that sort of so well. How rude of me as a host just to completely disappear. Leave you guys just to kind of talk to the audience, but it sounds like you kind of picked up brilliantly. So great answer to that particular question. I've got a couple of other questions actually, just before we kind of get into maybe some of the other kind of questions, just to kind of understand about the breadth of your kind of experience. Across all the clients, how many clients do you manage at 2 Octobers, and how many locations have they got?
Yeah, that's a great question. So me personally, I manage between 6 to 7 clients, kind of with my hands in 6 to 7 clients, and a couple clients have 20 locations. In the past, we've had clients with over 100 locations, and then we'll get the occasional just one single location client, which seems kind of boring sometimes when you go from clients with 120 plus locations. So kind of all over the place. And then Noah, if you want to talk a little bit about what you've got on your plate.
Yeah, sure. So the clients that I've serviced over the years have been bicycle shops mainly. And so going from single location up to 5 location chains. So nothing massive, but for me, what's been most interesting is understanding how important GMB is in driving traffic and revenue. And before the webinar this morning, I did a quick search looking through all of our G&A, or all of our analytics for our different bike clients. And what we found was that GMB, in what we were tracking, we found that GMB was driving between 1 and 43% of the revenue. And that was revenue that was viewable through GA in online e-commerce applications. So my challenges have historically been local SEO and driving people into the store to make purchases, and trying to leverage e-commerce to try and drive revenue for local and kind of regional players to try and get them all to that like magical, how do we make $1 million a year? And in the bike industry, that's always been a pretty interesting challenge that has been pretty easy to smash this year based on the pandemic and that kind of move to buying online and picking up local.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're a pretty broad spectrum of traffic percentage. Yeah. 1% up to 43. What would you say is the kind of median then?
What do you mean? Wait, I couldn't hear the question. Say that again. So
you said that the range is 1%.
Yeah.
Up to 43 in terms of
7 to 10% seemed to be where they were clumping. And the one that had 43%, what was shocking was that their revenue year to date online was well over $1 million. So that was pretty interesting. And they're located in, one of the 2 largest cities in Canada. And so that was pretty interesting from my perspective, because they're typically a local, mainly they were seeing about 3% of their revenue online, and to see GMB accounting for 43% of it, and for that number to be well over 1 million was really interesting to me.
How has that switched with the pandemic for your clients then? I mean, have you been pushing e-commerce a lot harder and encouraging adoption of?
So before this year, I had one client that had broken 1 million, and this year we have 4. And so we're seeing many multiple 100% growth in that vertical. So they're going, one business is up 300 to 400% over last year, and their all-in cumulative revenue is up 30 to 40%, which is really shocking.
And is that really driven by e-commerce?
I think it's due to a lack of ability to do other activities. They can't go to the gym. Like when we hit the lockdown in Colorado, for example, you could walk, hike, and bike. I think those were, and cross-country ski and snowshoe. Was snowshoeing allowed? I don't remember. And the questions were like, can you walk your dog? Are you allowed to walk your dog? That was a question. It was like, yay, I can take Shadow on a walk. And he's probably with us. And I have a fun hangout, and Shadow is always in the background. He's kind of fun. But sorry, Miles.
I guess, Niki, for you, obviously kind of your team, Niki, how much of your kind of working week is spent managing GMB with all the other stuff you're in charge of?
I would say, at least, especially for our specialists, a good amount of time with GMB posts, which is why Noah and team created the tool that we talked about briefly at the beginning. Managing GMB posts, especially with multi-location, has definitely been very time consuming. So that takes up time, obviously. And then things like uploading photos. So I would say probably like 30 to 40% of the time, there's a good amount of GMB tasks to manage for our team.
Okay, great. So you spend a great amount of time thinking about it, operating within GMB, kind of trying to tackle the issue and kind of gain efficiencies as essentially any agency kind of working around GMB would do.
Definitely a lot more heavy lifting when a client's brand new too, getting things optimized and making sure everything's up to date.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, Niki, and then I'm going to basically switch my Wi-Fi back to the proper Wi-Fi rather than my phone, which is a bit rubbish, and then I'll kind of come back quickly. So I'll ask a question, switch the Wi-Fi, and then rejoin the kind of conversation. So I may disappear kind of momentarily or go static. Thinking about new clients and like a scenario of winning a new client who's obviously kind of local in nature, GMB is a big part of it. How do you approach the setup of and taking control of GMB? And let's say there are 20 location clients, so a fairly sort of mid-size sort of business. What is, I guess, what's your playbook? What's important that you get right kind of from the off, and what are the sort of pitfalls that you want to avoid when basically getting going and onboarding a new client?
Yeah, so our system is typically, we try to get management access at the highest level the client will give us, whether that's them adding us as an owner or a manager or giving us direct access to their GMB account, which typically tends to be a little easier if there's a lot of locations versus them having to add us as an owner on every single location. But then doing a data dump from all of those locations, making sure that all of that information is correct, matches up with what's on the website before we engage in any sort of updates, making sure that name, address, phone number, all that important app information is up to date. And then going through and just really optimizing those listings, making sure that there's photos in place, UTM tags on the URLs, that they have a business subscription, hours are up to date, everything like that is really kind of the foundational stuff that we try to make sure is correct before we dive into anything more in depth.
So you guys, obviously you try and get kind of access, kind of management access to all the kind of locations that kind of clients got. What are the kind of common issues or challenges that you have when you're working with bigger clients in terms of sporadic kind of control and ownership of those locations? I.e., some locations, don't know who their owner is, they haven't got access to it. Is that an issue you come across? And what's your strategy for kind of squaring the circle so that you've got full access to all the accounts that you need, and you're ensuring that other people in other parts of the organization aren't making changes that don't kind of get authorized and approved by you?
Yeah, I can jump in. That's definitely been a challenge, especially with big multi-location accounts where maybe somebody's come in and they know the access for a few locations, but not every location. So getting access to those can be a hassle, especially right now with COVID and the GMB support team being kind of bare bones, having to go through that waiting period of waiting for things to verify if you need to re-verify a listing or get access. I think the biggest challenge that I've had with multi-location is sometimes in a franchise situation where we maybe are managing a handful of listings for a location, and then there's franchisees that are managing their own listings and trying to get that brand consistency. So really kind of setting expectations with a client when there's a situation like that of, hey, here's some best practices for the listings that we're not directly managing so that they can see that consistency in all of their listings.
And a kind of follow-on question for that, in terms of, obviously you've got kind of clients, some are small, some are medium-sized, some are big. You presumably got access to a numerous number of different locations. Obviously, this kind of, I know people have sort of voiced concerns of the potential of like getting account level sort of suspensions in GMB, which then causes suspensions of individual listings. Is that a problem that you've ever encountered?
I want to give Noah some time to chime in here, but I've got a fun story that I'll share real quick. So we had a situation where we had a bunch of listings for a white label client that were synced up with Google AdWords extension, local ad extensions. And for some reason, when they were adding local ad extensions to listings, GMB was automatically creating a duplicate listing that wasn't verified. So somehow we ended up with many locations, duplicate locations unverified in this one account, which then Google all of a sudden decided to just one day suspend everything. So we had to thankfully had the opportunity to work with Joy Hawkins, and she helped us get everything cleared up. And we then separated everything into GMB only in this account, local ads accounts in this separate account, and so we can avoid that problem. So that was an interesting situation where Google actually essentially caused a problem within its own platforms. Have you had any fun suspension stories?
No, I've basically been super lucky, and all the kind of resolution issues that I've had to go down the road of like ownership, who owns it, why can't I get access, those types of things, they were all mainly solved via chatting with the GMB support team. So that was all like pre-COVID, right? Like, so during COVID, solutions have been way different. Can you speak to like what's practicable now and the best way to interact with the support team now?
Yeah, so typically I found that Twitter direct message is the best way to reach out to support. Right now, that's not the case. If you send them a message on Twitter, they'll respond right away that they're not responding. So the official Google My Business help support forum is really helpful right now. The amazing volunteer, note that they're volunteer GMB product experts, I think we've even got a few in the chat right now, are really great about monitoring that and trying their best to help out and escalate things if possible. And they're just generally very knowledgeable. So I would definitely take advantage of that. And then Sterling Sky also has the local search forum, which is a great resource if you're running into issues, especially while the GMB support team, and Noah's in there with links right away. So I would definitely take those avenues while GMB social support is down.
Yeah, it's been down for a while as well, and it seems to be no signs of when that kind of might change. So I guess for now, just kind of go down, make use of the forum, and then also make use of the kind of GMB local search forum as well. I guess a question for each of you. When you sort of start with Noah and Niki to chime in as well. What's the biggest challenge when working with GMB at scale? What are the biggest challenges if you were advising, a new agency or a friend of yours starts an agency, they get a client with 100 locations. What are the things they need to know to deliver effective GMB management at scale?
No, you want to take a shot? I was trying to give you a shot.
I want to talk about the post part of this. You talk strategy, and I'll go tactical.
I think one of the most important parts about managing multiple listings at scale is just making sure that you have your data in a consistent place, organized. So for us, one thing that we do is we have a master data sheet when we have any multi-location clients. So all of the business information, name, address, phone number, hours, URL, business description, categories, anything goes into that master data sheet, and that's signed off on by the client. So we know that when we're updating information to GMB and then doing some citation work later on, that any of that information we're using is the accurate information. So just having that master data sheet is a really great way to have everything organized in one place. And then using consistent store codes, which you're using in GMB, can definitely be helpful in just kind of keeping everything organized and making sure that they make sense. They're not just like some rogue numbers, but having some sort of like location indicator in those store codes can definitely help make things easier when you're looking at multiple locations as well.
How does that make it easy, Niki? What's the practical advantage of doing that?
I think just in like my own brain, if I'm looking at like the master data sheet and I see that store code has a location, the first couple characters of a location, so I can see what that location is, especially when I'm doing data dumps and that sort of thing. It just makes it easier than having just some like numerical store code.
And when you're kind of making changes, and you're kind of need to, let's say, store changes or kind of at the time of COVID, sort of shops being sort of kind of temporarily closed, do you just, and then you're doing it in bulk? Is your do you have tools that you use? Do you just do you do it via CSV? Do you go to the dashboard and make changes by hand? What's your tried and tested approach to maintaining or making updates at scale?
Yeah, so when it comes to things like hours, that sort of thing, definitely using the bulk upload spreadsheet from the easiest way to make hours changes with special hours and that sort of thing. And Noah's got some thoughts on bulk managing posts in the time of COVID.
Yeah.
No, do you want to chime in about that?
Yeah, for sure. So what we saw Google Posts as a great way to scale our efforts for different multiple locations. And so we built a tool that allows us to schedule posts in the future and to do it at the chain level as well. And the benefit that we see for that is to keep all of the work inside one Google Sheet so that you can build posts and then even have them scheduled in the future. And they have UTM tagging baked in so that you can properly tag the value of your posts so you can communicate that to your clients. And the thing that we thought would be super cool would be able to build a tool that would allow someone with a very low technical debt to build a scalable service around GMB posts, Q&As, and review management. And so with G Suite as a service, a task management tool as a service, phone bills and cable bills, and a simple add-on, you could drive revenue for clients at scale. And let's say you're building posts and they take you 10 to 15 minutes a piece because you don't have any of that context shifting around going between different toolkits. It's all in one sheet. You can easily build posts and charge $100 per location per month, just as a concept. That's kind of where we saw the tool being useful. When we started building it, we weren't aware that chains were going to be opened up through the API for more than just COVID related posts, because that was the messaging coming from Google at the time. Through testing, though, we determined that chains could also post, and maybe I just missed the public knowledge around that. But that's what led us to build the tool. And what we found is that it makes it a total breeze to build out all of your posts in advance, get sign-offs from clients, and then schedule them. And then the tool automatically loops through every day. And if posts match that day, they just get posted to Google.
Nice. As well. Sorry, is that like a tool that you guys give open access to, or is it just something you utilize in your own clients?
It's an add-on that's available in the G Suite marketplace. It's called Postomatic.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Let's get a link to that if it hasn't already had one go out. And what's your how effective do you think posts are? I mean, can you guys talk to any of the kind of metric shifts, improvements in traffic, or even down to kind of revenue that you've seen from effective use of posts? And maybe you've got a best case example where it's just absolutely, knocked it out of the park in terms of what you wanted to achieve with using posts.
I think in my experience, it's definitely dependent on the vertical and what types of posts. Obviously, posts where there's some sort of conversion action that you can track, so like a coupon code or product posts where people are going straight to URL and then purchasing tend to be a lot more beneficial. I had a CBD client where they have an e-commerce store, but they have their location as well where they do some small sales, and we started just doing product posts for them, and they saw $600 in extra e-commerce revenue in the first week that we ran GMB product posts, which they weren't expecting to really get anything from that. So that was a fun win. As far as just kind of overall effectiveness of posts, I think, or the benefit, I think it's just an extra way to get more information out to clients. We have a multi-location coffee shop client right now that just had a grand opening, and posts have been a really great way to get more visibility and just kind of get more information in front of people that are learning about this new coffee shop and discovering it on Google Maps. Especially in the time of COVID, a lot of people are going to Google to see if things are open or what they can find out about a business. So utilizing posts is a great way to get more information than you can just put in the hours or the business description.
And I'm right thinking that COVID posts stay live indefinitely?
I believe so. Things keep changing, but I believe though, and those get pushed up. Those COVID posts get pushed up further in the listing as well.
Yeah. So ignoring the, I guess.
You said too quickly. Is that okay? So I wanted to get numbers around this before the webinar. So on one of our firms that has done over 1 million online, they did something like 143,000 from GMB. And to put it in perspective, over the past month, posts drove only 2 transactions and $349 in revenue for that particular business. And while that number is super low, I think a piece of this that's probably getting lost is also the semantic search piece of it, which is teaching Google's algorithm about the relevancy of your business for different types of services. I don't have metrics around this to point to, and I want to develop them over the next couple of months because I want to be able to tell a narrative about how important they are, and I just need the data to prove it.
So what you're saying is that, I guess, if you looked at the kind of direct response metrics in terms of revenue, it wouldn't be something that would create kind of good ROI. But you feel that actually there's more value there in terms of informing Google about what the business does that helps with your kind of your search performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what we found over time is the cross-device tracking is the bane of most of our narrative, meaning that historically, I wanted to know what the power of ads were, right? I wanted to know how much revenue they were actually driving. And what we found with ads was that due to cross-device tracking problems, that whatever I could prove was roughly half the revenue. And those same cross-device tracking issues are probably coming into play here too.
Sure. Quick questions coming from Brent in the chat. So how frequently do you guys recommend posting to your clients? What's the frequency of posts?
So normal posts, like not event posts, just like the general what's new posts, stay fresh in the listing for 7 days. So if getting just kind of that consistency of updated information is important for your client, then I would recommend setting up a posting schedule of every 7 days so that you consistently have a post that's showing in the knowledge panel. Event posts will obviously expire based on the dates of the event, so those can be a little different. But yeah, if you want to be able to start establishing some consistency, then definitely every 7 days would be a good cadence.
And in terms of the kind of content of those kind of posts, I mean, do you find that actually, obviously kind of calls to actions are always important, but do you find that actually you get a much better kind of, either kind of click-through rate, conversion, sale, if the post is very much kind of offer orientated?
I think definitely either if it's offer orientated or if you're sending them to some sort of valuable content. So if you're doing just kind of like the what's new post category, you're sending them to the website to a blog post or a service offering or a product offering, that sort of thing. Anything where you can definitely try to get more out of that post with them spending time on the website, finding more information. Anything you found helpful with that type of posting strategy, Noah?
Yeah, I feel horrible. I was just getting a link for Jacqueline. She asked about what's the best way to do tagging, and I was looking up Claire Carlisle's link for her. So what was the question? How often? What's the cadence?
Yeah, how often? What types of posts like convert best? That sort of thing.
Totally mixing it up. So the way that I think about things, so because I'm trying to manage e-commerce and local at the same time, and we do content marketing for all of our clients, and so I'm always trying to build product launch content, and I need that to get indexed. So anytime I'm building, I sync up our content calendar, post along with it on the same day that we're launching our email marketing. And then I use those landing pages to build remarketing audiences for our paid team. So that's what I'm doing, like what's new or producty type posts. And then we always want to announce every kind of event that's happening in store or anything that aligns with what the client is trying to do, that's local and relevant to their audience. And so it really depends on kind of what their goals are. And I hate to use the SEO standby of it depends, but it kind of does. Definitely we're trying to hit each location at least once a week. I mean, that's the bottom line, is at least weekly.
Have you found that it's easier to create post content for clients that have an e-commerce aspect to them, which I guess more and more businesses are doing now, given COVID?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Because you always have content. I mean, all of the sites that we manage, except for one, that are in the bike space, have at least 10,000 products, right? So it's like there's an endless stream, and in that strategy, if you want to get tactical or strategic about it, it's like play around in Google Analytics, look in the back end of the website, look at what products are actually converting, and not just now, but over the past year, to see what those patterns are like, and pump out posts related to new products that we need to get indexed and rank for, products that are bread and butter products, stuff, like we have one dealer that was telling us recently that they'd sold over 2,000 units of one specific bike helmet. And so that could be a product that, with a little bit of bump in a post, it would be interesting to know if that could actually drive something that converts like crazy. Was that helpful, Miles?
Yeah, that's really helpful. If I'm really honest, I'd never thought about the opportunity to use GMP posts to drive e-commerce sales, either directly or through kind of getting, kind of Google to semantically and to understand that, that product exists on a particular kind of website. But I like the way that you've kind of created kind of sort of flywheel, so to speak, in terms of using posts as part of your kind of outreach plan for new products alongside content that drives people to the landing page, that you then kind of drop a cookie and then you can kind of retarget them.
Can I just respond to that quickly, because I think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I try and always align all of the efforts that I and the team that I work with take around business goals. And SEO is critical to that, but it is all about the flywheel. And if there was one piece that I would try and get SEOs in as a group or a cohort or whatever to think about, it's how can we drive revenue? And I've always had like a really simple revenue model, and SEO is a huge part of that, which is revenue equals traffic, and that's true for in-store and online, times conversion rate, or percentage of people who buy in-store because we're good salespeople, or online, times average order value, which is like, how much are they buying? Are we doing a good job in-store getting people to add on a bell or a helmet to the purchase, or are we not getting them to buy packages? And if we can align around driving revenue and thinking about all of the things that all the leading indicators that will grow those three pieces of the pie, our clients and us as an agency will become stickier. Like we'll become stickier to them because we're making them money, and also they will make more money routinely. And by focusing on that flywheel and all the pieces of it, anyone who's doing e-commerce / local and the two playing together are going to see lots of gains. Really simple, but very effective.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions coming. One of them is kind of linked to this. I will go through all the questions, everyone, by the way. And for those people who have just joined a bit late, the reason you can't see me on screen is that basically my Wi-Fi is being really annoying and flaky. I think it's better now, but I don't risk putting on the video. Anyway, it's much better just to see kind of Noah and Niki, because they're kind of the true experts in this field. Jack has got a question about UTM parameters. What UTM parameters do you use on GMB listings? And obviously you can use them, I guess, in the listing URL itself, but also on posts. What's your kind of approach and rationale for how you use UTM parameters?
Can I take it?
Yeah, go for it.
So in building our silly tool, I was super lucky that Niki introduced me to Claire Carlisle. And we had several video Zooms together where I got to watch how she works, and in learning how she thinks about UTM tagging, it was just a no-brainer for me to just adopt all of her methodology. And I did link that in the chat. I think it just makes in terms of how we're typically doing it. Do you want to go into the actual pattern though, Niki?
I think, or just no, go for it.
Okay, so just aligning all of our UTM tagging so that we're talking about source, medium, campaign, and content. And so the source is Google, the medium is organic, the campaign level are the different types of posts if we're doing posts. So like what's new, event, offer, and COVID. And then the content is just the specific posts so that you can track the unique efforts. And what's really cool about that is that you'll get to a place where you'll see trends of how the different types of posts are performing. And then that'll give you insights into what types of posts to build in the future. And you'll be able to report on the specific performance of the specific posts. And the most important piece of developing a UTM tracking strategy is that you're consistent, and that you use that consistent pattern all the time for every client so that you can develop a reporting framework that's easy to execute on.
That seems like a pretty good, clear strategy to kind of go for. Niki, anything you want to add on that?
Just kind of general best practice when it comes to UTMs, just making sure you're consistent, you're using all lowercase characters, which I think Claire talks about in the resource that we linked to on the side there, but just making sure that everything's clean and you're following those best practices.
Great, we've got that there. Thank you guys for reposting that. So, okay, Niki, got a question for you. This one comes from Jill. Looks like we've kind of provided some links to it already, but we'll kind of just answer this on air. So Jill's question is, I work with medical practitioners. I'd like some clarity around the need for multiple GMB listings for individual practitioners based in one clinical location. and essentially, what's the best practice, and how do they do that to avoid potential sort of pitfalls of a kind of Google suspending listings?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, like you said, we included a couple of resources on the sidebar there, but when it comes to practitioner listings, I think they're definitely beneficial and should definitely have them if you have the ability, because it allows for specific practitioners to have their own set of reviews apart from the clinic where they're practicing and that sort of thing. The thing that really kind of can make it or break it when it comes to listings not getting suspended is paying attention to the category. So having doctor's office for the main office, or clinic or hospital, whatever that appropriate category is, and then doctor or chiropractor versus chiropractic office, that sort of thing. So making sure that you specify the difference in the practitioner listing versus the actual medical center listing in the category can make that difference. You can definitely have secondary categories that are also relevant, but making sure that primary category is the specific category for that practitioner.
How do you handle the situation? Because obviously some practitioners might be aligned or work within multiple clinics based on their kind of commercial agreement with the clinic. You come across that scenario where you've got the same practitioner that actually works out of two or three locations, and therefore can legitimately position themselves there. How do you manage that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't run into that situation, but I'm sure that definitely is an issue. I could see where that would definitely be problematic in the landing page that you're linking to from the Google My Business listing. So I would guess they would my recommendation would be in that situation for them to probably have to pick one location that they're maybe primarily affiliated with, and that's the location that they link to in their in the website link, but then maybe mentioning in their business description that they practice at multiple locations, that sort of thing. Yeah, that definitely is one of those unfortunate it depends situations.
So imagine I was a really pushy client and a really pushy kind of chiropractor, and I wasn't happy the fact that my Monday to Tuesday clinic was the only one that I was able to promote. And I said, I want to get GMB promotion for all of these, would you walk away at that point? Or, do you think there are workarounds that can be used, and how might you plan that?
I mean, you could definitely try to have multiple listings, because if you're practicing at two different clinics, one on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, one on Tuesday, Thursday, and they're two separate locations, you could probably get away with two listings. It's definitely going to cause some issues if they're in the same city. You're going to probably kind of be cannibalizing your local search efforts if you're using the same doctor name but at different locations. So that definitely gets a little complicated. I see Noah Payton tapped Jason Brown to see if he has any thoughts in the chat. I think that's definitely a great idea. I think it's one of those trial by error situations where you have to kind of try a couple things and what sticks and what makes the most impact for each specific situation.
I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it probably does trigger some sort of flag at kind of Google. I'm sure Jason will share that. It's a very legitimate case there, right? Isn't it? It's the practitioners.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Time, and we legitimately want to get that promotion. So maybe Jason, you can give us your kind of view on that. And cheers to Noah for pinging him. Okay, I've got a question here for Noah. This one comes from Jacqueline. What's the best way to merge duplicate listings due to an old business address?
I have historically had success chatting with Google, but that is historically, right? And so I linked to an article higher up on the screen from steadydemand.com that Ben Fisher, and I got to give props to Ben, actually. He's been one of my 2 or 3 biggest mentors in my SEO career and helped me immeasurably at every step. So I just want to give him props. But he's got a great blog article about contacting Google now and what are the best /only methods that are effective via Google during COVID. But historically, what I found was that in chatting with Google, we had all of the CIDs available, and we're able to talk through it with their team to tell them which is the keeper, which is the one we want to dump, and that we were very clear about a desire to keep all of the reviews in the process.
Yeah, I guess it's a key point, isn't it? Is about kind of making sure that the reviews migrate to the correct listing that you want to maintain. Yeah. What's it's probably a relatively simple one for kind of Google to solve, but what's the kind of timeline that you would expect Google to be able to resolve that for or within?
It depends, and it depends on the ownership status of that location. I've had everything from a 2-month process, which was the worst, and it was because the owner of the listing was on a round the world bike ride and they couldn't get the person, to within 24 hours. So, that was super lucky. The 24-hour one was really easy. The ones where they're unclaimed in duplicate seem to be a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah.
One thing that I found success with, just on a case-by-case basis right now with GMB support being super limited and not available via social, is that if you, like I saw Jacqueline say that your listing has 0 review, one of them has 0 reviews, is that if you actually go in and use the suggest and edit feature and mark it as a duplicate listing, it'll give you the option to choose the other location that is the duplicate. And sometimes if you do that from a couple different Google accounts or have a couple friends do the same suggested edit, sometimes those suggested edits will take hold faster, especially with where Google's support is right now.
Okay. That's an interesting kind of tactic. I haven't heard of that one sort of being used. So you kind of do it from a number of accounts. So you're kind of adding more voices to that kind of change request.
Yeah, Google's like, hey, multiple people have said this thing is wrong. Let's fix it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. Let's go on to another question. And Niki, maybe I'll start this one with you. This comes from JP Finn. Says, I have several global offices. I'm wondering if my international GMB listings should have the same name or should be a different name. For example, should it be example company in brackets UK, example company in brackets Ireland, or should actually we have a consistent name, just example company for all the different locations? I guess he's thinking this from an SEO kind of location relevance point of view. Niki, definitely coming to you.
What are you pointing at, Noah?
You.
Oh, you're pointing the wrong direction. So it looked like you're pointing at the chat, not my screen. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's definitely, I think it was Joy Hawkins and Sterling Sky that just published a blog post and a case study recently that obviously locations where there's a location name in the business description perform better in the local map pack. Unfortunately, that can be seen as a spammy practice sometimes. So if you are going to use target Denver in your, as an example, business description name, making sure that that is what matches on the website. So that's the official location name. Otherwise, I would just plan on going with X business name. So you see it with Target, you see it with REI, massive chains, where they're not putting the location name in the business description unless it's actually part of the official business name.
Yeah, what's your view on that? I guess from a multi-location point of view, when you've got legitimately the same business in sort of 100 different locations, do you typically find that in those cases the brand name is the same, or do you typically find the brand name is then kind of appended with the kind of location? And would it always be preferable to you if it was legitimate to get the location name included in the brand name within GMB?
I think in my experience with larger chains, Google does a pretty good job of knowing the intent and serving you the location that's closest to you because of how proximity-based local search is. Obviously, if it's a highly competitive industry, and you're able to have that location name be part of the official business name for that brand. So an auto part or a trucking client where every location, the city name is part of that location name. And I think that definitely helps in that instance. So I think it's kind of one of those dependent on the industry and how competitive it is type of situations as well.
When you typically work with a larger client, so a brand that's got multiple kind of locations, when you're talking about the opportunities within GMB, do they see it more as a strategic opportunity to kind of get their branding consistent and accurate? Or do they see it more as a tactical traffic driving, revenue generating tool? So I guess, and therefore, might they look at that inclusion of the city name as something that actually that's just tactical? We're interested in the brand.
No, do you have any thoughts?
I do.
Go for it.
I think that this is where tagging comes into play to tell that revenue story really clearly. When you're seeing 10% of your revenue being driven by a channel, it's pretty clear that you need to pay attention to it from a revenue perspective. And if you don't have UTM tagging in place, get it there and then push that narrative over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's pretty clear cut. Like you said, if it's a sizable enough chunk of your revenue, then you have to look at it from a tactical point of view. But I guess if push comes to shove, if 10% is enough actually, but a brand might say, our brand has impact on every channel that we promote and market ourselves to and attract customers. Therefore, we wouldn't want to do anything to kind of potentially dilute the impact of that brand, even if it benefited us in a tactical way. At some point, for example, the BrightLocal brand, even though we're not a local business, it's it's quite kind of pure in our eyes, and we wouldn't do anything that really kind of diluted it by trying to add BrightLocal Brighton kind of kind of ended it into the GMB sort of perspective. I guess where does the kind of balance come in when and you as kind of advisors and marketeers, what is where do you fall on that line? Do you always go for tactical gain, or do you weigh that up against the kind of long-term brand value and make sure that brand is consistent?
Ooh, Niki, I want to hear how you think about this. She's a lot smarter than me, everybody. Just for
no, not at all.
I'm like the king of space cadets, and she's like
that one. It seemed like there were a couple of parts to that one. Can you repeat that question for me, Miles? I've got some thoughts.
So I guess it's about at which point would you not sacrifice brand for tactical gain? As in, you can get a bit more kind of SEO visibility and organic search and local search by doing some tactical stuff, like adding a location name to the end brand name. But actually, you might end up sacrificing the brand's kind of clarity and consistency in doing that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's definitely a lot of value in having that brand consistency. So when it comes to having the location name with the brand, I think that's definitely a good tactic if it's possible to do it without violating the terms of service. I think having that brand consistency across multiple listings for smaller brands that isn't like Starbucks or Target or Home Depot can definitely be helpful, especially if you're growing a brand in multiple cities. So that's where I feel like there's definitely the brand value behind some of the tactical stuff. I've seen a good way to kind of get some of that brand consistency and execute some of the tactical with things like GMB Q&A, having similar but not exact questions across multiple brands can be helpful, or referencing other locations in Q&A, especially if you have locations where you have a city, a large metro area where you have multiple locations that you could end up kind of crossing some local search wires where a new location might not be showing up on maps right away if you're searching in a large metro area. So using Q&A to say, hey, we have a new location in this part of the city, that sort of thing. So using some of the features available in G&A to establish that consistency between multiple locations could be helpful.
Yeah, interesting idea about kind of using the kind of Q&A to, I guess, kind of cross-promote the different locations you've got. I'm going to jump back into other questions that were posted, and thanks to my team for just telling something that we are have run over. I hope that's going to be okay for you, Niki and Noah, given the
No problem.
I'm really loving this. You guys are answering questions fantastically, so thank you. This question comes from Ian. It says, do you have experience of managing GMB listings using a Google organization account? If so, what are the pros and cons, and how would you recommend approaching with managing new, like 10 plus clients and locations?
I haven't actually I'm assuming he means the agency account, and I haven't actually used the agency setup. We typically will try to just have ownership access given to us in our own account, or we'll get login credentials for an account that has all of the locations in it. So unfortunately, I can't speak to the agency account setup at all.
It seems like tangentially what it sounds like the pros and cons is that if you set up an agency account, the primary email that's associated with that can't be used to manage the locations inside it, but the emails that you associate with the organization account are the ones that can actually make the GMB changes and create posts and create Q&As and take actions like that. But because we haven't used it internally, I haven't wrapped my head around all of the pros and cons, but that's just what I've gathered tangentially.
Okay. Out of interest, why? What is it stopping you guys making use of it? What do you enjoy so much about the current approach you have?
Yeah, your thoughts, Noah?
Oh, you're killing me. So it's efficient for our needs. I think that all those decisions that any agency makes are like, can we efficiently manage the business that we've taken on with this approach? And when you hit enough pain points, then decide to make a change to find a tool or service that better meets your needs. We just haven't had that challenge yet. I mean, I talk with Dan Leipson pretty routinely, and the types of solutions that he's come up with to manage the scale that he manages is pretty shocking. But how many SEO agencies actually have those challenges? You know, are there 20 agencies, 30 agencies, and the rest of us are dealing with 1 to 15 locations at a time? Mm-hmm. I mean, Miles, you have kind of a unique insight into the whole ecosystem. How many agencies have those? Like, what percentage, or what's the number? Like, if you had to estimate, how many agencies actually have those challenges, you think?
Of the scale that the local SEO guide does? Yeah.
Or just agencies have to deal with chains. I mean, like, how is it 100? Is it?
I think quite a few. And I think it's more about the approach. I think the approach that the local SEO guys take is it's phenomenally kind of data driven to a degree that I haven't seen amongst many other agencies. It's very much test, learn, adapt, roll out in what appears to be a very aggressive manner in terms of scale, timeline, consistency, and repeating action. I mean, we actually did a great webinar with both Andrew and Dan from the local SEO guide, where the guys can share anything, which I found fascinating. I mean, you talked about Niki being smarter than you. You know, Dan is like, usually sort of smarter than God, particularly when it comes to talking about the kind of management of kind of data at scale and extracting learnings from that you feed back into sort of future optimizations and tactics. It's he's a phenomenally kind of sort of good high level view of what kind of needs to be done. And I imagine they get some fantastic results there, and probably are able to conquer some of the more complex issues. But I think what you alluded to, actually, a lot more agencies work in the realm where the challenges aren't that complex, and that the solutions they need should be designed for the problems that they face, and to effectively deliver results, i.e., revenue for the kind of clients that they kind of work with. So sometimes you don't need to do the school run in a Ferrari. You just need a car that's going to kind of get you there efficiently and effectively and on time.
Miles, you just said something that was really, really critical. Test, learn, adapt, and roll out, right? Like all of these questions that we're getting, not all, but like so many that are performance related. The answer oftentimes is, well, did you test both? Did you test? Like, did you test? Did you test? Did you test? And I feel like having a framework around that is critical for success. And that's something that I want to develop as part of our tools team over the next 12 months or so, is having a testing mechanism in place that we can use to quickly roll out changes and to be more agile with how we work. What do you think?
I mean, it can't do any harm. It can only kind of improve performance. I just do kind of wonder when people talk about the value of testing and the importance of it. I mean, which is completely undisputed. Whether there are smaller agencies out there just starting up who don't necessarily have kind of clients to test on yet, or they haven't got the kind of technical know-how. Whether that feels like quite a daunting prospect. They just want to be kind of trying to deliver value now. And to they're trying to win some more clients. I mean, the wheels are kind of getting going for them, right? They're relatively sort of fledgling, small scale sort of business. Maybe testing feels like it's something they'll get to when they've got the basics sort of sorted out. I mean, am I totally wrong in that? I mean, should testing be something that everyone does because ultimately it will deliver better results?
Niki, you want to go?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it's something just like fundamentally as SEOs, we tell people when people are asking how do I get better skills as an SEO, is to create a site and start testing things. So I think the same thing applies to this scenario. Like, you've got to be testing things to kind of see what sticks, especially with all of the features Google changes. We see things come with GMB. We saw posts show up, and at first people are like, what the heck are these? And we don't learn the things we learn about some of the GMB features unless we test things. You look at Sterling Sky, they're a great example of that. They're of an agency that is testing things all the time. So I think especially for a small agency that maybe is just starting out and trying to kind of learn what works for them, you definitely have to be testing things.
I was totally going to go there. And for anyone, if you're not reading the Sterling Skies blog, I think it's fantastic. And the thing that they do, all of their tests are kind of micro tests. What's the impact of keywords in a business name? What's the impact of changing categories? What's the impact of doing product data inside GMB? And they do it over a period of time that's necessary to get statistical relevance, and then they release all that data for everyone to know. And it's the way to read that blog is not what is the best practice to do A or B. It's how do I learn how to approach my craft in order to do better work, to drive more revenue for our agency because we're sticky, and to drive ROI for our clients so that they'll be stoked and keep us around.
Yeah, I guess it can certainly give you good ideas to take back to do your own testing on. It kind of gives you, maybe some validation that actually this is an area to be testing within, and then you can implement sort of various tests and see how it might work. Different kinds of industries and different locations. Maybe it kind of shines a light on an area that you can go deeper into. Rather than, I guess as you said, just take it as gospel that this thing will work. This is an area that you should focus on because it seemed to be working. Just find out how it works specifically for your clients and your locations.
Can I also posit an idea to your actual question, or just like the way I would approach it strategically, starting small? You have to have a baseline of data, right? So you have to have tracking set up properly. You have to have you have to have GA set up on a site, number one. Number two, you have to have UTM tagging set up properly inside your Google My Business. You have to have your primary categories set properly. You have to have a baseline of citations. There's a lot of discussion of like what that volume is. And of course, it probably depending on your vertical. You want to have all all of the important ones, and that number depends on your vertical, and starting small and making sure that that NAPW data is accurate. And then once you have a baseline and you have a consistent kind of like publishing flow with GMB posts going, then you can start to layer in testing. Would you agree with that as a timeline, Niki? You have to get the basics right. And then once you have basics and you have enough data to be able to understand what's statistically relevant, then test.
Yep, I think that sounds spot on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mo, for spelling that out so clearly. Appreciate that. Right, a couple more kind of questions to kind of jump into. So actually, this one we kind of covered, but maybe just to kind of clarify, question comes in from Jennifer. With multiple sites, I guess multiple locations, is it best to post the same thing across all, or to make them different? And if you are going to make them different, you know, what's your approach to kind of making them, I guess, unique for each location so that they're relevant?
I think if it's an event, if it's like an offer post, I think there's definitely a use case there to have the same content across multiple locations. I think if you're just kind of posting like a what's new type post, your general information, if you can make those unique to that location. So in the text, making sure that you mention the location name, that sort of thing. So making sure there's a little bit of unique distinction between the posts definitely has value as well.
Keep in mind though, too, like your audience is different. Like the people who are going to go shop at CVS Denver, right, are different than your CVS Fort Collins. So that getting that kind of like audience, like I personally am not worrying about that. And maybe I'm being dumb on the offer posts. I'm pretty comfortable pushing the same post to multiple locations. And that thinking comes from a place where I'm like, well, how much revenue is this driving, right? So like if I'm only driving two transactions over a month between 5 locations, I'm not going to put the time and energy into making it unique necessarily. That's how I've thought through it. Am I being dumb, Niki?
No, I think that's two different brains working. Like I go like more tactical, like how Google looks at it. Like Google's probably wanting to see like that location keyword in a post. I don't know that anybody's necessarily tested that yet, but and then you go to the revenue side, which I think are both totally legit ways to look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting kind of keep it coming back to I guess the kind of what you're trying to achieve, you know, and if revenue is what you're trying to achieve, and actually your extra time spent in there isn't going to get you any kind of incremental revenue, then it's probably not time particularly kind of well spent. I'm sure there are posts, studies looking at the impact of kind of keywords in posts, and hopefully someone who's listening will sort of share it. I can't think of any of the findings off the top of my head. Let's try and answer the last few kind of questions that we've got. Maybe go to you here, No. This one comes from Amber. She says, this is a question about categories under the services section. Do we know how useful adding secondary services that don't come up are? For example, I work for a mental health counselling service, and only counsellor and psychotherapist called as primary, but we do a lot outside of anxiety and depression counselling. So I guess, how much extra value is including those services?
Fantastic question. And I get to point down there at Colin Nielsen because he did a fantastic study on this, I believe, or maybe it was Joy. I think it was Colin. And what they found was that removing categories has a super negative impact on removing relevant categories has a negative impact on rankings and traffic. Adding relevant categories has an additive impact on traffic, and having unrelated categories has a very negative impact on traffic and revenue. So as long as the categories are relevant to each other and to your business, it's all good to keep adding secondary services in categories. But if they're not related, that's when you start to have really bad outcomes. So keep adding categories as long as they're relevant.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The maximum number you can have at the moment?
Ooh. Is it 20?
Ooh.
I think it's 20.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I'm making that up. I don't know. No, 20 is service. Is 10. 10. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Yeah, categories are interesting, especially what I've noticed recently with like what you search for. So Target is an example. I've noticed this with I searched for Nintendo Switch one day and Target came up as an electronics store, but then I searched for comforter and Target's came up as a department store. So that's where those secondary categories can definitely be helpful because it will change how you show up for very specific searches.
Yeah. Okay, great. This next question comes from Michael. Michael says, I guess, Niki, will go with you. For service area businesses, what is the value of products versus services? I know that products show up in GMB search listing, whereas services don't. Is showing services as products okay or against Google policies?
I would definitely list services. If you can attach like a dollar value to that service, I think you could probably try listing it as a product. I haven't seen Google necessarily penalize at all for misuse of that area. So if you're not too worried about a listing getting suspended and having to go through the process of unsuspending it, that's definitely something I would maybe test out and see how that worked, especially as far as conversions go. But yeah, if you can kind of tweak that service so it is like a product with a linking to a product page or linking to the service page and having a price attached to it, I think you could get away with that.
Yeah, because I guess you can be much more specific within kind of products, can't you? I mean, if you're a gardener and you offer decking, there's probably not a category for decking, but it could be a legitimate service that you charge a price for per hour or in as a sort of solid kind of price point. So
exactly.
Yeah, I can see that being very legitimate. I haven't had experience of seeing any kind of concerns about doing that, because if anyone who's listening in doesn't think that's a legitimate approach, please chime in on chat. Okay, let's going to scroll down the list. I guess another question from Jacqueline. Maybe one for Noah. It says, how do you attribute in-store revenue to GMB organic search? And I guess there's a whole minefield of attribution, but you seem to have wrapped your head around it in a number of different ways. Don't hang your head, Noah. It's not that bad a question. It's probably quite a big one, I admit. But I guess, I mean, what's your best take on being able to effectively attribute physical in-store revenue to stuff done online?
I hate this. I hate attribution for this specific question. We've put a lot of thought into it, and almost all of where I've settled is that directional is okay. Like having directional attribution and directional reporting is okay. And there are so many things that make it hard to know. Other than, and what we used to do, I managed a bike shop for a long time, and we tried to ask every single person, what brings you in today? How'd you hear about us? And we used to have 1,000 people a day walk in the store, and we would, hey, welcome to Young's. That was the name of the bike shop, Young's Bicycle Shop on Nantucket Island. If you ever go on vacation in Nantucket, go to Young's. But I would say, hey, what brought you in today? And you'd have to actually physically track it and write it down for every single person. If you want to be accurate, you need door counters. If you want to track people coming in the store, there are these tools that allow you to sort of track mobile users to try and correlate that to sales. But if a user goes to your site on a mobile device and then comes in, maybe you have a chance. But if they're looking at using multiple different devices, multiple sessions, if there, I mean, there's so many things that make it super hard to track and know. I am planning for a solution. I just have not cobbled together anything that I'm super stoked on.
Yeah. What is your, you talk about direction, and by direction, I assume you mean you essentially kind of guess attribute revenue to certain channels and then track whether they go up or down. How do you start that off? How do you draw the lines in the revenue? We're going to attribute this to that particular activity or that that kind of medium and channel. How do you go about doing that? What's your approach?
Great question. So number one, I want to make sure that my GA setup is just standards, best practice for tracking revenue attribution. The way that we typically do it, historically, we used a time decay model, and then we've switched to a position-based model based on Nico Brooks's methods for doing attribution. He's played a huge role in how I think about this. And then we do our tracking in GA, and we push those conversions to Google Ads so that we can track the attribution from Google Ads inside GA appropriately. In terms of tracking in store, it's super, super difficult because we have access out of the 20 something locations that we manage. We only have point of sale data for 8 of them. And so getting that data is often black boxed. So how could we ever prove that those in-store conversions otherwise, right? Like, we need all the data to even try and cobble something together. And what we found is that the more we do, the more our clients make. I know that's super simplistic and horrible and not acceptable to a lot of people in the webinar, but what we find is that when we are active with our content marketing machine, and when we optimize GMB, and when we create posts, and when we create Q&As, and when we have shopping campaigns that are working with a return on ad spend of greater than 10 to 1, and when we have remarketing campaigns built on the landing pages for all the content marketing pieces that we build, and when we have our YouTube content driving remarketing campaigns, and when we have cart abandonment recovery tools, and we actually built the only one for the bike industry, it's called Bike Basket. When we put all that stuff together, we see the flywheel working. And all I care about is revenue growth. And that's what I focus on almost entirely. They made X in year 1, and putting that system in place, while it's not as detailed and data driven as I'd like, we've seen that system create 60+% revenue growth across all of our clients for 3 years straight. Mm-hmm. And so I'm okay not knowing everything as long as I'm focusing on the things that are driving revenue. And it's really all about kind of linking all of the different tools together to drive a system. And you have to kind of figure out what ranges you're going for and what's appropriate for the vertical that you're in. And as long as you're seeing the revenue growth trending the way that you need it to go for your clients to be happy, then what else really matters? It's like the attribution piece is really critical. And of course, it becomes way more important when the narrative is not one of growth, but one of shrinkage. And I've been pretty lucky in the sense that our different clients have been experiencing tons of growth for a consistent period of time. And so I've just been lucky that we haven't had to deal with that. And of course, our vertical's been very lucky too through the pandemic. It's been absolutely crushing it.
Thanks. No, that was a truly detailed and excellent answer. Not good enough though without the data, but I guess we'll have to take that as a model. No, very sage words. I think it's a really, ultimately, if you're if you've tried and tested various things and you've seen the performance improve in aggregate when you're connecting all the dots and doing all the right things, then as long as you're moving that major needle of revenue in the right direction and the ROI the clients are spending is positive, then there's little that they can argue with, right?
Absolutely. It's a super simple, it's like, how could you, like, the story of what we're selling them is a money printing machine. It's like, if I told, I feel like a snake oil salesman, but it's on the Google Ads side, our performance is so strong that we can say, if you gave me $1, if every time you gave me $1, I gave you back 10, how many would you give me? You know, they're like, oh, as many as I could, you know, and we've been very blessed in that in our vertical and based on the flywheel that we're building, that's the type of performance that we're driving.
Yeah, and I don't think you find a client anywhere in the world that wouldn't kind of bite your hand off for that type of return. Okay, guys, I think we've taken up enough time. We answered most of the questions in numerous different forms kind of throughout. So I think we'll leave it there. We've overrun. We've got another kind of clinic happening next week. This is Marketing Agency with Tim Capper. This is the one where we totally flopped 2 weeks ago. Major technical. Actually, that was Crowdcast that time. They completely balked. This time it was my Wi-Fi. Fingers crossed next week we'll get both things working all at once. But Noah and Niki, you've just been absolutely fantastic. I mean, thank you for dealing with my rude hosting and dropping out and the Wi-Fi issues. Thank you for kind of going into the depth that you did, and for actually your incredible candidness. I found it really enlightening. You kind of sharing your experiences and stories, both the good things, the bad things, the troubles, and obviously the kind of successes. We can kind of learn from all of those. So thank you so much for giving us an hour and a half of your time and your expertise.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it. Just a quick shameless plug. We have a pretty fun training and education initiative going on at October's. We're doing monthly or sometimes bi-monthly workshops. The past ones, we have a couple on multi-location businesses up on our YouTube channel. And then we also do training and coaching engagements as well. So feel free to find us on our website and just pop over and say hi.
Yep, I think that's good. We just dropped the link in there as well. So awesome. I would certainly be taking a look at that, because that sounds like time excellently well spent.
And I added our Twitter handles. Our DMs are always open. We love having people. And my little shameless plug is just, we have a hangout called Agency Automators, where we help agency automate their different processes. We talk to most of the smartest minds working in the field, whether it's Hamlet Batista, David Sotomano, or Dan Leipson, even folks like that. And we've got a site and a free Slack group, which is really fun. If you go to agencyautomators.com and scroll to the bottom, you'll see the Slack group lineup.
Great. Brilliant, guys.
Miles, amazing.